Welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, the official podcast of Ryan Johnson Ministries. This podcast was created for the purpose of equipping others for the advancement of the kingdom of God. We hope that you enjoy this episode and encourage you to subscribe to the Blacksmith Chronicles today. For more information about Ryan Johnson Ministries, please visit www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us.
Hey guys, welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. This week, I'm very excited and honored to welcome the guest that we have scheduled for you. It's someone that I got introduced to a little over 10 years ago. I've kept up with their ministry, the work that they're doing to advance the kingdom of God. It's a unique ministry, but it's a very much needed ministry, especially in this hour that we are involved in right now. So without further ado, I want to welcome this week's guest, Annie Lobert. Annie, thank you so much for being part of the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast.
Am I getting ready to get pounded, Ryan? I'm just curious. Do we need to heat it up, everything up here? People are listening right now. Can y'all handle us? We're about to go off.
I don't, you never know what you're going to get. So for those that may not be familiar with Annie's story, such as myself, can you give us a little bit of a background? Who is Annie?
Well, I'm just some normal chick that just surrendered to Jesus and started obeying him. So I'm nothing out of the ordinary, but I do know that inside of me is the extraordinary and the supernatural. So when I walk in that and I flow in that, that's when I know that God's called me to do certain things. And just like you said earlier, what did Jesus ask us to do? More than anything, you guys, when he left, he said, "Peace I leave with you, peace I bequeath unto you." But he also said, go out into the world and preach the gospel. And we know gospel means, because the angels brought it first, the bearer of good news. So I want to hear some good news. I don't know about y'all, but right now in our state, in our country, in our world, there needs to be some sort of good news happening, because I know it says if y'all read your Bibles, or if you've heard people preach this or say this, that the end times, they're going to have certain things happen, rumors of wars. But this is the main thing that the Christians are supposed to watch out for, the coldness of the hearts that are going to happen. And one of the things that I knew was the fact that, of course, I come from Minnesota, and so I'm going to get into who I am. And my daddy was very abusive growing up. He drank and he was an alcoholic. And what I didn't realize at the back end of my dad's story and my grandfather's were, both of them were in the military. They were both in either the Army or the Air Force, and they both had very hard upbringings. They drank a lot. So my family was passing down this generational addiction. And my dad comes from a German, French line of people. My mom's full Polish. So you get these two different ethnic groups. I don't want to say ethnic, but European, right? European and then Slavic. So my mom, Polish people are Slavic. So Slavic and European meeting together. And then we have all these different things happen. My dad and my mom fought a lot, and my mother got hurt by my father as far as like mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I've witnessed all that growing up. So when I left home, I was really embittered towards my dad, and I wanted to just totally rebel. And I ended up going out into the world and just becoming one of those people that was searching for love in all the wrong places, and looking for love was in the 80s. It seemed a lot different than it is now. I mean, that's literally 30 years ago, right? And life was different. President Reagan was our president. I think Jimmy Carter was part of that earlier, and Ford was part of that a little earlier. But the whole thing was, what I remember, that there was a lot of like a coming to type of generation. We were just about video games. MTV was out. We had no social media, Ryan. There was no social media. There was no way for a lot of us to argue quickly over issues, right? There was the news. The news back then wasn't biased. It was pretty unbiased. There was like half the news was, kind of rightish, and then but there was more so a leftist type of thought process of, I would say, liberty and kind of socialistic ideas, but they weren't as prevalent as they are now.
Right.
And in other words, I was a Democrat for many, many years. And I really believed in LGBTQ rights. I believed in stripping for a living. Like, I thought I should be free to do what I want. Like, I should be able to go sell my body if I want to. I should be able to have sex with who I want. And that was just the way that I thought. Even though I was raised in church, I rebelled against that. I was a Lutheran. I rebelled against all of it. But I really believe that people needed to have their rights no matter what, to do what they wanted to do. And that was my whole idea. I was basically living as maybe as freely as a hedonistic person could live. Like, I was like, what's the problem with having sex with a bunch of different people? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, I was so lonely inside, I justified it. And I ended up meeting one night at a nightclub, these two traffickers. And I didn't realize that they were pimps at the time. And I actually had 3 jobs. And a lot of you are going to hear my story today. But the best part of my story is the most meaty part of it is actually in my book called Fallen Out of the Sex Industry and Into the Arms of the Savior. You've got to get this, because this is going to tell you the deep heart of trafficking and why I got trafficked. So a lot of people would look at me and say, she deserved that. Like, she chose that life. Now, in a lot of respects, I did choose the sex industry, but out of a broken heart and out of a spirit of lack, out of spirit of poverty for myself. I never was given the things that I wanted in life. You know, when I was growing up, we weren't very wealthy. We weren't even middle class, you would say. We were probably below middle class as far as monetary, but my dad was a real hard worker. So when I finally came and I met these men at the bar, like I said, I had 3 jobs. I was a teenager. Now, your mind does not form correctly until you're about 25. You get all of your brain cells, but your mind's still forming. So if you have a traumatic incident happen to you, which I did at 8, 9 years old, and then prior to that with my family, your brain is reacting to the trauma. Mm-hmm. The brain is the type of reaction to danger and any type of abuse that happens. Your reaction is always going to be self-sustaining. It's going to be a gut reaction. It's going to be a fearful reaction. It's going to be a desperate reaction. So for me, meeting these men, it was like they were my saviors. Like, they had a lot of money, and I was like, oh, I want to go to college. And my girlfriend starts dating one of the guys, and they tell her that they're very wealthy, that they have, you know, land that they own houses. They had business cards that were not even real, saying, oh, we're real estate moguls and we own a car lot. And one had a Volvo, the other one had a couple Benzes. And my girlfriend gets the keys to the drop top Benz. It was pearl white, which is my favorite. Okay. And it had gold dipped rims and rim lips. Do you remember the rim lips back in the 80s that they used to have on cars?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the door handles were dipped in gold. The Mercedes emblem was dipped in gold. I was blown away. I was like, that's my car right there. But my girlfriend, she says to me, hey, the guy, he is like in love with me. He bought me this ring. And I was like, that's fake. And she said, no, it's real. Huge diamond. And in the 80s and even the 90s, diamonds were something that you could not create in a lab. Now you can. Did you know that there's lab created diamonds now? Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Diamonds from Africa, South Africa, were worth a lot more than they are now today because of the fact that there was no artificial chemistry happening with diamonds. So when you had a diamond, woo, man, it was worth a lot of money. So yeah. She's wearing this ring, and I'm just like, wow, I've never had a diamond ring before. I didn't move. I went to Hawaii, where she was at the time. The traffickers that we met had houses in Baltimore, Chicago, Minneapolis, that's where I'm from, Hawaii, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. I might have missed a city in between. I think they might have had one down in Florida too. So I go to Hawaii, and the first night that I landed in Hawaii, I got this fake ID because I was still, a teenager that said I was 21. So I can go to the nightclubs, so I could drive a car, so I can do whatever I wanted to do, and I ended up with my girlfriend going on a call, And what I mean by that is we met 2 Japanese men that couldn't even speak English, and they gave us a lot of money. I didn't have to do anything for the money, just to hang out with them, right? And I turned my first trick. And that's what I mean by that is you are agreeing to sell yourself for up to the hour for a certain rate. And you are agreeing to be sexually active with someone else for monetary value, right? And I ended up turning a trick. And let me be honest with you, I did not think anything of it, Ryan. I was just like, oh, hey, I'm already going out to the nightclubs anyway, and all these men are looking at me, and men are using me and abusing my heart. I'm going to charge for it now. This was my solution. And it felt like a really good shoe to put on. Let's just say Cinderella, when she had her glass slippers, they fit her. So to me, this was a shoe that I put on. I was like, I'm not taking this off. Now I know the truth. I can charge men. And I was pretty. I had a cute body. I had a great personality. Why not? Right? I mean, I'm charismatic anyway. You guys can all tell by my conversation with Ryan right now that are listening. Like I like to talk. I like to engage. I like to have conversation. I'm interested. I'm curious. I'm happy most of the time. So I thought I was very marketable. And did I have a trafficker in the beginning? Absolutely not. What I mean by trafficker is it's a person that is bringing you into the sex industry under fraudulent activity, out of coercion. He's tricking or she's tricking you, or it's out of force. You're being forced to do this because there's a gun to your head, or there's a threat on your life, or a threat on your physical being, or someone that you love, right? Yeah. Or property that you own. Because sometimes traffickers can hold your ID. They can hold, like, you know, maybe stuff in your apartment or anything that you own, maybe even pictures of family, Ryan, something so simple that someone would never think is valuable. They hold that over your head. I'll destroy it. And you're like, no. And you know, this is the thing. I valued things back then because I worked hard for every single thing that I got. Even though I was a teenager and didn't have very much, I still hold high value on the things that I earned for myself because I didn't have a lot of nice things growing up, like I said. So when someone threatens you like that, you're going to listen to what they say. Now, for me personally, nobody was threatening me at the time. I was like, I wish somebody would try to take my money that I made for myself. I had such an attitude. I was like, I'm telling you, I mean, I'm in my 50s now, but when I was a teenager, I was lit up. Okay. You could not tell me anything was right or wrong. I decided for my future and my now that I was in my mind. Right. Yeah. So I ended up, leaving Hawaii and going back to Minnesota. I quit all 3 of my jobs, and I was at a strip club because I was like, I was sold to the fact that I'm going to just use my looks and my body to get what I needed. I started strip dancing. I almost got killed on 2 calls before I was a stripper. And that's why I stopped working escort services in Minnesota. I did not want to die. I was like, this isn't worth it to me. Now, if I'm a stripper, I'll be able to choose my clients. I also got convicted for a hot minute. I was talking to a friend of mine that was reading the Bible, and he was like, you should read this. You should read, Mary Magdalene, she might've been a prostitute, and the woman caught in adultery, and the woman at the well. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe God's trying to speak to me. I'm not sure. And so I thought if I just stripped and I didn't sell myself, even though stripping is selling yourself, because you're selling a fantasy to a man or someone that comes in that nightclub that's buying you for that short amount of time for that 5-minute dance or that 10-minute or that half an hour lap dance. You're selling a fantasy, right? You're just, there's no way you're not. Like, come on. Even if the guy's married or the woman's married, they're sitting down, you're selling a fantasy. Ooh, look at me. You could have some of this. You should check it out. Just touch my leg. Don't touch anything else. Give me $20. Give me $100. You know what I mean? Like, you're selling yourself. And so I met this guy one night that walked into the club, and he put all this money in front of me, and I was just literally enamored. I was like, oh my gosh, all that money. Woo, man, I'm going to dance for this guy. But beyond that, it was like, I think it was like about $400. I can't remember exactly what it was, 200 or 400, but it was a lot. And I thought, man, I'm just going to hang out with this guy. Here's what the kicker was. He was very good looking. And I was so materialistic back then. I thought, well, he's good looking. Let me see where this goes. And we started talking. We exchanged numbers. He had a cell phone. Back then in the 80s, there were no cell phones around, only in cars. I was like, wow, what's this guy up to? He like just swept me off my feet. And he was very, dressed nice.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed like he knew a lot of people. He seemed like he had like a good business going, but I found out later that he was a drug dealer.
Mm.
He'd have wads of money like this, counting his money. And then I started going to the trap houses with him, dropping off dope. Believe it or not, yes, dropping off dope. And I was against drugs. And back then it was crack cocaine. Crack cocaine was super like the thing, okay? With white people, black people, didn't matter. He'd go to very wealthy neighborhoods, drop off his drugs. Then we'd go to the inner city neighborhoods, drop off the drugs, right? So I was scared. I didn't want him to do that. So my girlfriend had moved to Las Vegas, the one that I first learned how to sell myself with.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, hey, come to Vegas because the money's really good here. And I was like, yeah, Vegas, let's do it. So I flew to Vegas with him, kept my apartment up in Minneapolis, brought him with me. He was on probation. He had gotten out of jail. It's a long story, but he attempted to kill his ex-bottom girl. That's what you call it in the game. It's a bottom girl. It's the first girl that is with a pimp, or the girl that is with the pimp the longest, or the girl that controls or is obedient towards the pimp and the stable of girls that he has. Does that make sense?
Right.
Or her, because there's female pimps too. But this lady in particular was my girlfriend in Vegas was one of my best friends. So the first night that I came to Las Vegas, I worked, and then I got home to her house because we were staying with them. And my pimp knew the other pimp, right? And again, I'm calling him my pimp because I didn't know he was a pimp yet, but he was a pimp.
Right.
I had no idea. That night I had a reckoning, so to speak, because I came home and put my money on the counter with my purse, and he said, break yourself. And I was like, I'm not giving you a dime. This is my money. No, man, he beat me down and brought me out to the back and just punched me and choked me and kicked me and yelled, and blood's coming out of my nose and my ears, and I can't breathe. I'm gagging on my own blood. And I was so devastated. Like, I couldn't believe he could do this to me. And I loved him. I loved him with all my heart. And so that was my first day of sex trafficking. That lasted 10 years. 10 years with two different men, two different traffickers. The first one I left after 5 years. And a lot of people say, well, I mean, Annie, you could have gotten away. Like, this is like, what? And I'm like, no, that's not what you think it is. I did get away twice. Now, you're going to have to get the book to read the whole story because it reads like a movie. Can you hear me? I don't know why that just did that.
Yes, ma'am. We got you.
I had that on Do Not Disturb, and it still went through. How is that possible?
I don't know. So let me ask you this, though, because right here where you're at, you just said you went through this for 10 years. And obviously it's not a fairy tale of what you had in your mind of, the money, the rings, even the trips, the luxury trips, and so on and so forth. What is it that you're telling yourself in that time in between being beaten or the things in which, quote unquote, you're working for, your money being taken from you? What are you telling yourself in that 10-year period?
Well, at the time, you don't really think like that, except for the fact that you always think future, now and future. And so I was thinking, I'm going to stash money and I'm going to get away. Or I was thinking, he's going to change. Both of them, both different traffickers. The second trafficker was a lot less obvious of a trafficker because he was a dancer in Las Vegas, but he lived off of me and my earnings. So he wasn't like the other trafficker. It was a lot different. But the whole premise is this. I always had this light at the end of the tunnel in my mind of, okay, he's going to change, or I'm going to get out of this somehow and I'm going to escape one day. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to meet a rich trick. I'm going to meet a rich buyer. I'm going to meet a rich John, And a John and a Mark trick, same thing. It's someone that buys sex that pays for sex. Okay. And so I was thinking, I'm going to meet like Pretty Woman. Like literally, I saw that movie with my trafficker when it first came out, and I bawled my eyes out. And he goes, "What are you crying for?" And I'm like, "Cause she got the happy ending." Like, and no pun intended, by the way.
Right.
She got the happy ending. Julia Roberts, Richard Gere ended up together, even though that was not their names in the movie. I was so jealous of her outcome. I was like, when's it going to be my turn? He's paying for her college. That's what I wanted. That's the reason why I got into the business. I want to go to college. Now I don't even want to go to college because, well, if I could do it, actually, Ryan, I would go. I have a couple credits already, but I just don't have time right now. But I'm doing my life. In fact, they say, I believe it's 10,000 hours of your profession that you work. You're an expert at this point at PhD level. Okay. So I've done that. Double, triple, quad, on all the stuff I do now. I'm a major PhD expert on what I do now. So you don't, like I said, you don't always have like a perfect plan when you're being trafficked, because the whole time that it's happening, you're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. And what I mean by that is you want to run, flight mode. You're like, I got to go. I got to plan something. I got to get out of here. And then there's fight. You want to fight it. You're fighting the entire scenario in your mind and physically and mentally. Like I would sass him and say, you know, I'm going to beat you down. I'd be like, whatever. And then he would beat me down, right? I would just sass him. And so I was in fight mode. And then freeze. There were times after he beat me down, I would be frozen and I didn't know what to do. Like I just was like stuck, afraid to make the wrong move, because every single beatdown got worse. And every time I came closer to death, like I'm not kidding you. It's like this slow walk of death towards the guillotine, and you're walking and you know it's coming. You just don't know when, but you're getting closer to it. Right. And then the fawning is making light of it and making friends with your enemy, knowing that's your enemy. It's called, another word for it is the Stockholm syndrome, where literally you're in love with your captor, but you know that it's not right. And you're like just getting along, making peace for the sake of peace.
Right.
So they don't hurt you deeper. Right. Even if you don't agree, you pretend to agree to whatever they're asking you to do. So that was me. I was in total trauma mode. Complex trauma exemplified. And what I mean by complex trauma, there's two types of trauma. There's trauma and then complex trauma, PTSD, and then complex trauma. So post-traumatic stress disorder is something war veterans learn and experience themselves from. It's called shell shock. They are in war and they're possibly being shot, or they're seeing bullets whiz by them, or their friends are being shot, and they're witnessing mayhem and murder, right? They're witnessing horrible torture, right? It's war. It is what it is, right? Complex trauma happens also in war if you're in a situation where you feel endangered 24/7, okay? You're trapped and you cannot leave. A prisoner of war can experience this, or someone in a foxhole. You can't get out of that. A foxhole is a dark dug hole, or a place that you're hiding, but you're hiding from the bullets and you're popping up to shoot and then you're going back down, right? So Some people don't know what a foxhole is. So in trafficking, a foxhole would look like, for me, it was being in a place where I'm living, coming home every day, knowing if I try to leave, I'll be followed, I'll be shot, and I'll be tracked, and that I can't leave. My foxhole was the entire Las Vegas. Unless I leave Las Vegas, I'm not getting out of this thing. Because even when I worked the day shift and I tried to leave him, he had people spying on me to follow me. Okay. Wow. I got kidnapped, by the way. I got kidnapped and I got thrown in the trunk. I got kidnapped, thrown in the back seat, beat down in a Benz, a blue Benz with white leather seats, blood all over the place because it was my blood, because I ran from him. And I tried to escape, and he cut all my hair off, took me to a pimp's lair, 6 pimps. There was a bunch of girls on the second floor watching me that I used to work with that were disgusted and crying their eyes out. And the pimp said, I dare you to call the cops. I dare you to call the cops to see what what's happening to her. So, that foxhole thing is real. And so complex trauma is basically anytime you're in danger and you can't escape. So this happened to me as a young child with my abusive father. So if you've ever had abuse in your family, if anyone's listening right now and you've been in an abusive situation where you live at the place of the abuse, you've been a foster kid, you live in a house where there's just a bunch of abuse and you can't escape it, you're a little kid, you don't know how to escape it, that can cause complex trauma. And complex trauma has a bunch of subsets. Complex trauma can develop into not only PTSD, but it can develop into anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, and just say, for example, agoraphobia is a subset of complex trauma. It's where you're afraid to be around a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It freaks you out. You get triggered, right? Another thing would be borderline personality disorder. You fatalize everything. Either someone's your total best friend or they're your total enemy. There's no black and white. It's black and white. There's no gray areas, right? Borderline's developed usually from child abuse. But it's also developed in very high trauma situations where you don't trust anybody. And the one you do trust, you cling with them with all your might because that's your only way out because you're so afraid, right? Another thing that can develop is, obviously panic attacks, repetitive panic attacks. You're panicking and getting triggered for reasons that don't seem reasonable. In other words, I go to the grocery store and you see someone that looks like a trafficker or looks like your trafficker, you get totally triggered and you stay frozen in the car. You don't want to get out because you're afraid that person's a trafficker. And if you walk out of that car, they're going to kidnap you back into the lifestyle. That's an example of panic attacking. Okay. Or you'll just get a panic attack for no reason. There's so many things like somatic reactions to complex trauma. So your body develops cancer like mine did. My body I got Hodgkin's lymphoma from being trafficked. That's an immune disorder. Your body, it's kind of like lupus in a way, but your lymphatic system breaks down. It starts attacking itself. And then all of a sudden you come up with cancer. And I was working as I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had cancer. If you guys can see my neck right here, there's a bunch of scars from the radiation that I had done to my whole body. And I lost all my hair. I had chemotherapy for a year, radiation for a year, and I was working as a call girl, Ryan. It was crazy. Like that in itself is trauma. Going on calls with wigs because maybe the guy that buys you is going to pull your wig off and call you a bee because who are you really, right? Right. You just don't know if that's going to happen or not. And I had a port in my arm, and actually I can show you the scar. See that scar right there? That's from the port I had for my chemotherapy. So it was kind of big and bulky, about that big. It would stick out of my arm. So I had to explain to the men that were buying me what it was. And when they heard, a lot of them felt sorry for me. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, they didn't know I had a pimp waiting for me at home. Right. I lied to them. So complex trauma is real. It's hard to heal from. It takes years. Let me tell you though, the grace of God is why I'm here. And also if you guys see my neck, everyone's like, you got something wrong with your neck. Yeah, that's my thyroid. It went completely AWOL because of my radiation therapy. So now I have a major thyroid problem. I take medication every day. Oh my gosh, I forgot to take my medication this morning. Oops. Anyway.
Well, when this is over, don't forget to take it.
Yeah. So you guys, it's real, Ryan. Let's just say trafficking's real. And just because I didn't start in the beginning to be trafficked from the sex industry doesn't mean it can't happen to anybody. Or that if you get in the sex industry, that it's not going to happen to you. Because most definitely at some point, you are going to get trafficked. There's no protections against it.
Well, I know there's people that are going to be listening to this and they're going to be saying, okay, at what point, Annie, what was it that brought you to the realization that God loved you and that he sent his son to die for you. What was it? What was that awakening moment to recognize I can give my life to Christ and I can walk away from this life?
Well, you know, I wish it would have been a wake-up call. There were wake-up calls on the way. I actually read the New Testament in 1994, right before I got cancer. I was in Italy for 3 months. I brought my Gideon Bible that my friend gave me when I was 18. I brought it with me because I had never been overseas before. And I read the whole New Testament.
Wow.
I loved it. I cried. That was the first prayer that I said. I said, God, I know I'm in sin. I need your help to get out of this. And you know, I didn't get out of it until the first time in 1998. But my total breakdown, getting out of the sex industry and drug abuse and hustling, you know, trying to hustle to make money and use my body and my looks. Because I was doing it as a corporate businesswoman, by the way, because I worked for a Japanese company for many years before I actually got back into the sex industry. And I was using my looks to get what I needed from that company. So it's still prostitution. And I turned a couple tricks. Okay. I gave a couple of the top, you know, CEOs, sachos, sexual favors to get up in the company. Right. And even in the car dealerships we were working with, I handled my business in the back with the managers and the supervisors. I would be like, okay, I'm going to get this contract here and this fleet account. So let me talk to you in the back. So-and-so, I go in the back, handle it, you know, because I had that knowledge of the sex industry. Hey, I can flip it and use it for corporate world. Like, and don't think that doesn't happen, Ryan, in today's world right now. Speaking of Hollywood, Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
He's an example. High-end prostitution. Oh, give me a blowjob. Sorry to hurt anyone's ears that's Christian here. Just keep it 100. Give me a blowjob and I'm going to give you this movie deal. Prostitution. Oh, I'll do it, Harvey. I'll do it. I really want this role. You know, so I'm not going to say anyone who did that, but hey, it happened. He abused his authority to get what he needed from the women. And so I did that with the corporate world. And I know in the corporate world that this happens all the time. Happens all the time. Politically. Oh, don't let me say names right now. We have women that will do whatever it takes to get higher and higher on the ladder in the political realm. Both sides, by the way, both parties. Right. Okay. Right. So that is something that for me personally I needed to get broken of that, Ryan. And I'm going to tell you what, nothing was stopping me. I was a train on a track on a one-way ticket. Okay. It's kind of like that song by Ozzy Osbourne. I'm going off the rail on a crazy train. You know that song?
Oh yeah.
Dun, 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 you know it, right?
The Everybody infamous song, intro. Right?
Come on, somebody. You have to admit it. It's really catchy. For me, that was me. I didn't care. I need to get to my destination. Even if I go off the trail, I'll get back on it. So I overdosed on cocaine in 2003 on August 2nd. That was my wake-up call. I actually overdosed 4 days before that, but this time my heart was beating out of my chest and it felt like somebody was stabbing me with a knife. And then I knew, oh, wow. I don't want to swear because I swore back then. I'm having a heart attack. My friend called 911. The ambulance came and I went to the hospital. By the grace of God, I survived that. And that's when I said that prayer. I was like, Jesus, I'm done. I am done. I had failed in the corporate business world with my partner that I was in partnership with. And I had nothing to show for it from the sex industry, but I got back into the sex industry for about 8 months. Started doing cocaine and I just every day, cocaine, painkillers, cocaine, drinking, painkillers, smoking, everything, just boom. And it's like, you know what? I'm so thankful for that day. I'm so thankful for that scare because it saved my life. It saved my life to overdose. And I'm so happy because Jesus became real. I wouldn't say for the first time in my life, but for the final time in my life. because this was my crossroads, so to speak. Okay. The train came to an end. You know those T's that you see? Oh, you can't switch tracks. There's a T there.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Like, it's there and it's a wooden thing and it says caution. And that was boom, I hit it. Explosion. By the grace of God, I'm here. And I got off the crazy train and I woke up and I knew that God had given me a second chance. And let me tell you something. I have never, ever gone back. I was instantly delivered from cigarettes, painkillers, cocaine. Gone. So awesome.
I love that you say that it wasn't the first time, but it was the last time that encounter marked you. And I really, really like that. So eventually you launch what is known as Hookers for Jesus. And I know that there's people in this world, the good Christians, that are immediately put off by this even title because they automatically think wrongly of it. But there's a reason specifically, because you are not only just ministering to people, you are actually doing your best to rescue them. And you're trying to give them more than the simplicity of a simple statement, but you're literally trying to pull, for example, women off of the street and stuff and everything. And you're one of the, I would say, few individuals that I personally know. It doesn't mean that there's not more out there, where you're not intimidated to go back against the industry. And the industry, I'm talking about every aspect of it. And that has always fascinated me. So when you launched Hookers for Jesus and that ministry, why was it so important for you to go back and help these individuals?
Well, I just want to give what I know to be true back to the community that's suffering like I was, which the truth is that no matter what I've done, no matter where I've been, no matter how dirty I felt or disgusted I felt or how depressed I was or how triggered I was, no matter how much trauma I had, that Jesus was the answer. Because I didn't know he was the answer till he was basically in my life showing up to save me. And the thing is that if you're not ready for that, you might not accept Jesus. You might not want Jesus, because for me personally, I didn't want Jesus right away. I wanted to do what I wanted to do because let me tell you, Ryan, it's pride. Pride is the blocker of the blessing and the surrender. And so outreach, obviously, it's something we love to do. I wanted to give my friends that were still in the industry, because I knew a lot of them were kind of at a breaking point like I was. But it takes a long time in some respects with the sex industry to actually get to that point where you don't want to do it anymore. I'm pretty tough, okay? And I was sober most of the time I was working. No drugs, barely any drinking. I mean, I'm not really a drinker, and alcohol actually makes me sick. And so that's never been my vice, but the drugs were my vice. Narcotics was my addiction. And so I didn't want to go to work without being high at the end, because I started to hate men. Like, I didn't want a man to touch me anymore because I was so tired of it. And I felt so disgusted and dirty. Right. And so that builds up and builds up. So I wanted to bring that freedom to my friends that were still in the sex industry. That was my main premise. Hookers for Jesus is basically, we fish people out of the drowning waters of sex trafficking with our boat. It's called the Hooker. And there's a boat, look it up, it's in Holland, called the Hooker, okay, from Dutchland. And it's a fishing boat. And it's the same size of the boat they used in Galilee when Jesus was with the disciples fishing and when he walked on water, which is so cool. And I had no idea. I looked this name up later after I named it. And it's also based on Matthew 4:19. I will teach you how to fish for people. So when you get disgusted with the name like that, I ask Christians right now and non-Christians, check your heart.
Yeah.
Why is a hooker to you disgusting? You should never judge somebody for choosing that lifestyle, because you don't know the path or the geom or the reason behind her choice or his choice, because there's a pain behind that choice. There's an emptiness. There's a feeling of nothing's good enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough people admiring me. I have a hole in my heart. I don't know what else to do. Having sex seems like the answer because it makes me feel good for a little bit. I'm addicted to it now. Maybe I should sell myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was addicted to sex at one point in my life. So for me to sell it was like, let's do this, right? Did you know that some psychologists have studied this and doctors have studied this about children? Children that lack affection from one or the other parent or both parents are actually prone to being sexual.
I did not know that.
Yes. Seeking out orgasm, seeking out affection, because there's something in our brain that is not being satisfied. So it becomes a physical thing and it manifests. And maybe some of the porn addictions out there, maybe men or women that are addicted to porn never got the attention that they needed from one of those parents. And I'm not talking about sexual attention, a hug, looking in someone's eye, telling them they're beautiful and they're loved, they're chosen, they're amazing. They can accomplish so much in this world. God has created you for a great purpose. If you don't hear those words or feel that hug or that encouragement, your brain looks for it somewhere else, because your brain is designed to receive that love and that encouragement. So when you don't get that, like, your brain trips out. I think it really, it makes so much sense to me. The love of God, that's what was missing for me. It was missing. And so giving that back to the community that we reach out to is our main goal. Services, case management, that looks like love to me. Helping you with your court records, getting you on time to your doctor appointments, getting you diapers for your child, getting your cell bill paid, or your electric's getting ready to get cut off and you quit the industry. Now you don't have any money because you had money back then, and now you're working a regular job and you don't know how to manage your money. So I'm going to help you do that. That's how Hookers for Jesus started. And then, of course, the girls that we were working with didn't have a house to go to and to get away from their traffickers. So I opened up Destiny House, the first one in 2008. And by the way, Ryan, nobody was doing this back then. There were no trafficking agencies. There was like me and a couple other people that they didn't even call it trafficking back then. Like, it was so crazy. Like, I honestly feel like a forerunner, and I think I am actually. I'm like a groundbreaker, because out of my own pain came so much joy that I wanted to give it back to the community that I was working from.
Yeah.
So that's why, if you do this as a survivor, and I want to speak to all survivors out there of anything, of sexual abuse, of DV, domestic violence, of whatever you've been through in your life, addictions, car crashes, PTSD, complex trauma, you're surviving this thing, God's calling you. He's calling you to make a difference. That darkness that you walk through, that pain, that total traumatic experience, he wants to use to help others that are stuck in that situation. That's why Hookers for Jesus was started. It was a heart tug. The Lord pulled me and said, I want you to. I was like, okay. Because I was like, he did so much for me, Ryan. When God does so much for you in your life and the miracles he creates out of your life, he takes your messy situation and turns it into a beautiful redemptive message story, right?
Right.
Why wouldn't you use that for his glory, for his good? So that's why I started Hookers for Jesus, and of course Destiny House now. And I'm actually at Destiny House right now as we speak. I'm inside our offices. You can see my little bling station here. Next door is the house over this way, and we have clients right now, and we are just like, we love our clients, and they are in a safe place. They get 24/7 care. They get all their needs met: food, clothing, toiletries. They get little treats a lot. They go to counseling. They have trauma counseling. They have equine therapy. Self-defense is coming the next couple of weeks. We're doing self-defense classes.
Wow.
They have their own personal trainer. They get to work out. They have fun activities. They get to go bowling if they want, go eat. They get to go to movies, whatever. And movies is bad now because of COVID and stuff, and bowling too, but we're getting back into that rhythm. Hiking, or we're going to start hiking again, because it's, oh my gosh, the weather here is about to change for the good. I'm so excited. September and October are the best months in Vegas. Like it's hot today, but October is like summer for us. It's like 80 degrees in October here. It's so awesome. So
Nice.
It's a whole rounded trauma-informed, holistic program to help the ladies heal. And then the 7th month, they start school. They go to vocational school. If they want to go to college, they want to get their GED. And then the 9th or 10th month, they get their job. And then we have a second house. I'm so excited about this. It's called the Dream House. And that's where they move into after they graduate this program, and they'll have their job already, and we will have lighter supervision there. It won't be 24/7, and we'll check in with our social workers and anyone else that needs to help them, and just make sure that everything's going well. They're doing well in the world now. They're, handling themselves, and they're spending their money correctly. Like they're not, getting back on drugs. And of course we'll have drug tests as well. But this was our grant that we got from the DOJ. We're looking for a new property right now. We're going to be able to fund part of that with that grant. So again, DOJ is awesome. They have been very good to us. We do not bill out for religious services. So Ryan, anyone asking me, well, why are you asking for donations? Well, guess what? DOJ funds projects and expansions, not existing staff, not existing stuff you're already doing. Okay. Yeah. So give a big clue. That means we need donations more than ever right now, because our existing program that we created without DOJ needs to be funded. And that's our 24/7 care at the house with the ladies. And we have to separate all of our funding because it's a government grant. So we can't bill out for religious services. We can't bill out for Bible study. We can't bill out for a nice preacher teaching. Worship, separate. Church, separate. You have to honor that because that's taxpayer money.
Right.
Okay. So that's how Franklin Graham gets his grant. He gets government grants too. So
it really is. Yeah. It's an amazing story. And in the midst of all this, you marry
Ozzie Bear.
Who, if anyone is listening and is a fan of Striper, you will know the name. This is now your husband of many, many years, and you guys have
11 now.
This amazing relationship where you're both doing things to advance the kingdom of God. How do you articulate where you come out of this world of trafficking, stripping, and the prostitution side of it all, turning tricks, every bit of that, and then to wake up and realize I'm married to this man of God, and God has given me something that I never actually thought of back in that time, but now I have this. What does that mean to you?
You know what? Ryan, I was always looking. I'm getting a picture of Oz for everybody so they can see him. You can put this on there's my Ozzie Bear. Can y'all see him? Ozzie Bear. That's before we knew he had brain cancer, but now he's got brain cancer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's another thing. Look at that cool picture. He's got 2 tumors, Ryan. A glioma.
Wow.
I think it's a grade 1 or 2, and then he has an acoustic neuroma, and they both have to be operated on. So we're not looking forward to that. He's had it for 2 years now. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. You take those vows, and I first had to realize that I needed to get married to Jesus because my heart needed to be healed. And so I met Oz in 2007. We got married in 2009. We became fast best friends. Like we were on the phone with each other for oh my gosh, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. In fact, there were several months in a row he didn't change his cell plan. And back then the smartphones were just being invented. So the flip phones were still around with the little tiny pictures you would take with the screen. Oh, yeah. And you have to text really slow. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
And so he called me up and he goes, oh my gosh. I'd be like, what? He was living in California at the time. He goes, my cell bill's $800. I was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? He's like, I didn't change my cell plan, and I've been on the phone with you for hours. And I'm like, you got to change your cell phone plan. But so that whole is the icing on the cake, and the present from God, I believe, from obedience and surrender, because I knew I wanted to get married one day, and I knew that there was a man of God out there for me, and I had no idea it was going to be Oz. This was a total fluke how it happened. I believe it was God divine appointment. Kevin Max was my friend on MySpace, from DC Talk.
Oh yeah.
And he liked Hookers for Jesus. And he was friends with my friend Heather. And my friend Heather was doing the outreach called JC's Girls, Girls, Girls. And she met with Kevin one night. And his wife and him had moved to Vegas. And Oz was in town for the recording of, I think it was Murder by Pride, but I'm not sure. I might not be quoting that right, that album. And so he went to dinner with Kevin and Heather. And Heather had mentioned me. And he saw my picture because back then MySpace was a big thing.
Right.
And he read my story and he reached out to me. And I was just really crazy. I saw his inbox and I was like, whatever, this guy's like a scammer. I didn't know, I thought he was just after tail, right? Let's just keep it 100. But he wasn't. And he asked me out and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to Japan for a month or two. So I'll see when I get back. And we finally got to meet, and it was really crazy because he kept taking pictures of me and selfies. And I was like, what is he doing? And I felt like this vibe going on. And then the next time we met, it was over. It was October 2008. I think we went on our second date. It wasn't really, maybe it was our first date actually. And he was playing at the Las Vegas Hilton for a party. And I remember hugging him, and it was like, there was this crazy feeling whoa, I can't explain it. It wasn't sexual. It was like this rush. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
It was like this Holy Spirit thing. It was like he came over me, and my body just was like, oh, and then I knew, I was like, uh-oh, this might be the guy I'm supposed to marry. Now, I didn't say nothing to him. Okay. And then he started calling me a lot, and then we started seeing each other, and it was on. It was like, whoa. He kissed me, and I was like, uh-oh, whoa, this is really crazy. He likes me. And then he asked me to marry him in February the next year, and we got married on June 5th, 2009. But prior to that, the Lord told me, do not say anything to him about marriage. Don't you dare. And I was like, and so I was like, I wonder if he's going to ask me to marry him. And I was thinking about it. The whole time he told his family, I found the girl I was going to marry. And of course, Oz had gotten divorced in 2006. So, and we're friends, by the way, with his ex-wife and her husband. I know that sounds weird. We're all good friends. We are really good friends, to be honest with you. It's so cool the way God did everything. But so when he asked me to marry him, it was Valentine's Day. And I was very happy. I kind of expected it, but I didn't know it at the same time. And then of course we got married. So that was one of the best days of my life. And remember what I said earlier about in sickness and in health. Now, literally, if you don't take that to your heart and really believe that, 2 years ago, I could have said, you know what, your brain cancer, it's too much for me. I'm leaving. Bye. But I didn't do that. I know we have rough roads ahead of us. I know there's wheelchairs in the future. There is crutches in the future, whatever it has to be to help my husband get better. If anyone researches brain cancer, it usually doesn't go too good. It's pretty rare that you get cured of it. So we know that his time might be limited, but we both realize that this is a road that we're on, that we have to walk together as a couple. And I know people are like, why aren't you crying right now? Well, I've kind of disassociated myself and learned how to control my emotions behind it, because there's nights I'm sitting up literally and I can't sleep. I wake up and I look next to me and I'm like, I wonder if this is the last day. I wonder if he's going to have another seizure. I wonder if this is it. You just don't know. So do I feel? I do, but I've learned how to kind of just calm down those feelings and not panic, and just be in the moment of trusting God through everything that I'm going through right now, and him. I can't imagine what he's feeling like.
Yeah.
2 brain tumors. One of them's about like that big. It's acoustic neuroma. It's kind of shaped like that. And it's right between the ear where the eye level is, right up on the bottom part of the brain. So it started in his ear. That one will kill you eventually if you don't get it taken out, because it'll snuffle the spine. It'll go into your spine and then you're dead.
Wow.
So we've got to get that one taken out like as soon as possible within the next couple months. The other one is a glioma. It started out about this big. It's like that now. It's grown like a lot. And that one is right here in the back of his head. And it controls his left side of his body. So there's a possibility when they take it out that he's gonna lose his ability to play guitar in the left side of his body.
My goodness.
Yeah. And the ability to recognize me and other faces. So that's the part of the brain that is kind of a serious part of your brain. So we pray. So this is what I need prayer for, Ryan, for your people that are listening right now. I need prayer for immunotherapy gene acceptance. What I mean by that is we're at UCLA now, and if Oz has this certain DNA strand, this certain this sequence in his DNA, in his brain inside that tumor, when we get the tumor pieces to get it biopsied, if he has the correct brain tumor sequence, we can do brain immunotherapy. And what that is it's where they grow your cells in a petri dish and they shoot them back into your brain, and your own immune cells fight the tumor.
Wow.
Okay. If he doesn't have that, there's 2 different kinds he can have. There's a pill he can take that will shrink that tumor. But if he doesn't have those 2 different gene sequences, we have to actually physically remove it, which is the scariest thing ever, like an ice cream scoop. And then the complications for that is a lot of blood clotting. Your brain compensates, and either it destroys itself and just eventually starts other tumors, and then chain reaction happens. It turns into a glioblastoma, which is the kind of tumor that looks like an octopus. It just goes everywhere in your brain. Different, and it just spreads everywhere quickly and metastasizes. And the other scenario would be that only a little bit grows back in the cavity, or it could be a good scenario where the cavity just completely implodes itself and replaces it with matter. So we don't know what's going to happen. That's a small percentage of people that get that great result, by the way. So it's not, you know what, of all the cancers in the world, it's the worst kind to have, brain cancer. It's like, wow, because that affects your brain.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
It's a somber. I'm sorry to be so somber.
No, I had no idea I don't know how I've missed this. I knew your story. My mother went through it some years ago and stuff and everything, not brain cancer, but cancer itself.
Your mother went through brain cancer?
No, she went through not brain cancer. My mother went through breast cancer and stuff and everything. So, we definitely got a journey in that application of it. But, aside from my heart connecting to that, I definitely feel like it's a call to prayer. And I want everyone that's listening to be praying for this situation and the circumstances involved in that. And I know this is one of those things that we just scratched the surface of everything that you're doing, everything that you have done to help rescue individuals, what you're continuing to do right now in ministry world, aside from everything you're doing day-to-day life and stuff. And there's so much that has happened and continues to happen. And hopefully one day we'll be able to do this again. But for the time being, how is it that people can get in touch with your ministry, that they could sow into it, that they could learn more about it? I know your website, you're going to be able to pick up your book, Fallen, but I know it's available other places, but what's the best way for people to find out about the ministry?
Yeah, you just go to our website and hookersforjesus.net, like fishnet or .org. But yeah, fishnet is on purpose, .net, hookersforjesus.net. And also just on social media, we're on Facebook and you can donate there. But you know what we're doing right now, Ryan? We're doing a $20,000 matching campaign because someone stepped up. A famous person stepped up and said, hey, if you can raise 20 grand, I'll give you 20 grand. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
During COVID, that's amazing because we really need funds right now to run our current program that we have here. So they can go to Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Annie Lobert, and also Hookers for Jesus, and Twitter, same thing, Annie Lobert, Hookers for Jesus. And obviously MySpace. I'm on MySpace too, but people don't go there anymore. But yeah.
Well, I'm going to show my age. That's how I first got connected. I found Hookers for Jesus on MySpace. So
you remember us. Wow.
I remember that very, very vividly on that. So I want to encourage people to check out, because I know you're not going to be able to get everything on this podcast episode, but check out, you did a video for the 700 Club. You did one for I Am Second. And you can just get more and more information of the ministry, Annie's own walk, her personal story, and much, much more. So I want to encourage everybody to get a hold of that.
Thanks, Ryan.
As well. So,
and I've been on Fox too. I mean, I've been on the Jesse Waters show. I've been on Joey Behar, which she doesn't have a show anymore. I've been on, what's it called? It used to be, oh my gosh, Matt Lauer used to be on that show. What's that show called?
The Today Show.
Yeah, I've been on there. And I've been on like Nightline and a lot of MSNBC. I did a special called Sex Slaves in America. I also was on Discovery, Investigate Discovery. I did like it was a three series pilot series called Hookers Saved on the Strip. I didn't name it, by the way. I did not. Henry, the president, he decided that name. He's really nice, by the way. Henry, the president of Investigation Discovery, super nice guy. And so I've been on a lot of different TV stuff, which is really cool because I didn't understand how that even happened. I didn't pursue it. Just like the Pink Chair show, Annie's Pink Chair, the owners of the station approached me and said, I want you to have your own show. And I'm like, oh, so people can look at that too. That's on local TV here in Las Vegas on Channel 17. And we're also in Chattanooga, Tennessee as well, the CTN there. And we're also on just live on the internet for the show itself. And then we're doing our podcast. I have a podcast called Annie's Pink Chair as well. So join that, just like you're joining Ryan's stuff right now. Click on it and listen, because we have a lot of different fun things going on there. And I interview a lot of rock people. Like I just had Lacey Sturm from Flyleaf on yesterday. Cheryl Cooper. You know who Alice Cooper is? Yeah, we know who Alice Cooper is, right? His wife. You
seriously wow.
And I just had Brian. I had Brian Welch too. He's a friend of ours.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a bunch of more people popping up that are rock stars, that are cool, like connected people. And
wow.
I don't know. Just there's a lot of favor, and my whole mission though, Ryan, is I just want to help more people. That it's not to get famous. It's literally just let's help more people. Let's see what our influence can do, and let's do the thing. Let's not be here to be in people's faces as much as let's be here to tell people about what we're doing. Can you help me out? I got some people I'm trying to help that you don't see that through me are getting helped. Please donate. That's it. So,
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy individual, and
you're welcome.
It means a lot to me so much to have you a part of this. For everybody else that's listening, visit these links. You're going to see them here on the YouTube link as well. We do have them posted on our Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others as well. So for everyone else, I hope that this episode has encouraged you, equipped you, and challenged you in the furthering of the advancement of the kingdom of God. Until the next episode, guys, we love you and we bless you in the name of Jesus.
Thank you for listening to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. It is our prayer that this episode challenged you, encouraged you, and equipped you for the advancement of the kingdom of God. For more episodes or ways that you can partner with Ryan Johnson Ministries, please go to www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us. Please join us again soon for another episode of the Blacksmith Chronicles.